a suit and tie and get your hair cut way up high. Get yourself a lawyer, son. You're gonna need a real good one.
And speaking of that really good lawyer, guess what? He's actually seated before me here. This is the key indication that we're getting on top of this virus here in Victoria, is that David Whiting and I are now sharing the same airspace. Don't breathe, David. Good morning.
Well, I'll try not to. But breathing in will be okay. Breathing out, I'm stuck with.
Breathing
yes.
in is
Yes.
okay. Don't breathe out.
Okay, I'll do my best.
How are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
You look very well.
Thank you. I must say, I actually lost weight over the doing lots of walking
Good
and
for
eating
you.
better. So
Yeah.
not a lot, not nearly enough, but some.
But some way. I hear that you went away and did your own little research, given that you and I do come to blows sometimes talking about music, and you checked out some of the songs that I like.
Well, you told me about a band called Faith No More, of which I knew absolutely nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went and I listened to a couple of songs,
Did
and
you?
I just thought, no, not me. So
In fact, you said something else to me off air. You used a different term to describe Faith No More. You said it was dreadful.
well, okay, I'll do dreadful, yes. The kind of music I like is just more like poetry set to music, so it's the lyrics which
Who
are
says
important.
Faith No More's not poetry set to music, mate?
I did just then. Yep. So we will clearly, I'm not putting you in charge of my playlist.
Clearly not. I'm not
No.
in charge of the music at your funeral, right? None of that.
No.
Okay.
Otherwise, it'd be much quicker than otherwise.
Dear listeners, I think you better get involved here, and otherwise we're just going to squabble all morning, as you know. So it's over to you. If you'd like some free legal advice from David Whiting, he's here. 1300 222 774. There are no legal problems in Melbourne. I've got so many lines free right now, so everything's fine. Everyone's happy. There's no work for you to do, David.
We have a homework question from last week. We had Ian from Balwyn lives in a set of apartments or a set of units, and a Chinese lady was going back to China and said, "Can I park my Mercedes
right.
in your car park?
Yes.
And I'll get it when I come back."
It was a compressor, as I remember. Yes.
C200.
Oh, C200. Okay, yep.
So it's a mess. Under the Australian Consumer Law and Fair Trading Act, the first question is, was his obligation to store it? Let's assume that,
Yep.
because there's a bailment required, so there's a storage obligation. Now, because it's worth a motor car worth more than $1,000, you're required to give notice to the person who left it with you, and if you can't find them, you have to make attempts to find them and then wait 6 months before you can sell it. And then you have to sell it by public auction. So if I was Ian in Balwyn, I would, if the vehicle's parked in his car park or his spare car park, you would wonder whether or not the unit is let, find out who the managing agent is for the unit,
Yes.
find out, if you can, who acted for the buyer when the unit was purchased. That should be possible by ringing a few estate agents. And most of, Domain and realestate.com will have often the details of the agents last time. Then I would probably look at the car itself and find out who did the servicing. And
This is a lot of work.
well, the other option is you've got to wait. It's got to be sitting there for 6 months before he can do anything. So,
Is it in the way?
well,
Let me just leave it there.
for how long?
I don't know.
No, and when you want the 6 months to start.
So you need to get all this documented so the 6 months start.
Yes.
And then you can impound the thing.
Well, then you sell it by public auction, of
Right.
which not less than 7 days' notice has been given.
Okay.
And my view would be check the car dealer, the estate agents. There's every chance you'll find you'll be able to get in contact with the owner.
Has he emailed her to say, when are you coming back?
Doesn't have an email address. Didn't have anything other than, "I'm just going for a little while. I'll be back. It's all right if I leave it here." Very generous neighbour.
I just drive it for a bit, and when she comes back, hand it back.
You're assuming he got the keys.
I love these stories. If you have a better story, you're welcome to call in 1300 222 774. Being told on text, if Angel Dust is a classic, which it is, it's one of Faith No More's records, an absolute classic. And Easy Like a Sunday Morning, Virginia, a cover, but poetry at its finest. Ray and Mooney Ponds. Ray and I know what we're talking about. David doesn't. It's all fine.
That's why I'm here, not doing a music program.
That's right. Rebecca in Richmond, you're first up. Good morning.
Oh, thanks for taking my call, David. I'm ringing on behalf of my daughter who's 19 and lives out of home. She rents one of those old 60s apartments in Richmond, and it's got parking underneath. And there's been some damage to a plumbing pipe overhead in the car park space to her flat.
Yes.
She doesn't know if it's new or old. The pipe is a plastic pipe, but it's had damage that you can see that the copper pipe underneath has patinaed. So she doesn't believe it's recent. Her partner has a four-wheel drive with roof racks.
Yes.
It's a second-hand car. It's second-hand roof racks, and they're used for four-wheel driving, so the roof racks are damaged.
But is the roof rack clear of the plumbing fixtures? That's the real question.
Yes. So what's happened is she and her partner have been parking the car, and one of the other owners in the flats has rushed out and said, "You've damaged the pipe, you've damaged the pipe." And both of them are 19. And they said, "No, we don't believe we did." And they have denied it and then said that they will take the roof racks off. So they've taken the roof racks off the building, off the car, and now they're being asked...
Rebecca, the real question, the nub of the question is, did your daughter's friend's roof rack collide with the pipes? And
Correct. Yes.
No, you're saying it did, or that's the question?
That's the question. Well,
so it then becomes an exercise in what's the height. You need to know what the space is, because if you get to the point where the vehicle with the roof rack is below the level of the pipe, then there is no discussion point.
Yep.
So I would be putting my effort into trying to measure that.
Yep.
And if it was your daughter's friend's vehicle that caused the damage, then it's your daughter's friend who is responsible for the damage.
Okay.
But your argument would be it happened a long time ago.
Yes.
So that you have all those issues as discussion points as well. But your first one is what's the space below the pipe and what's the height of the vehicle with the roof rack? And that might be the end of the discussion.
Okay. Can I ask one more question?
Very quickly.
If the vehicle has adequate clearance without the roof rack, can they be forced to park on the street? Where they have a car park that they pay for in their rent?
No, the answer would be that's what they've leased.
Good luck. I hope
there might be owners'
helps.
corporation rules about the height of vehicles, but I wouldn't have thought they would prevent you doing that, and it's unlikely to be a rule.
Yeah. Gail in Shepparton, good morning.
Hello, David and Virginia. My request is unusual according to me, but it may be very familiar to David. David, I hold power of attorney for an adult family member with a disability. This family member has inherited money. I have tried making a will with a local solicitor who said if she could answer 5 questions to his satisfaction, he'd draw up the will.
Yes.
We failed at question number 2, David.
What were the 5 questions, Gail?
Well, we only got... The first one was, could she give her full name? Then the second question was her date of birth. She hesitated over that one, and I prompted her, which was the wrong thing to do, apparently, because he told me, well, she'd failed and he wouldn't go any further.
Gail, the question, there's a concept called testamentary capacity. Do you have the capacity at law to make a will?
Well, she doesn't.
Well, then she can't make a will.
Okay, so what do we do with the money, David?
Well,
it's sitting there and I'm managing it.
Yes.
What happens when she passes away?
Well, does she have parents?
No, the parents are deceased.
Grandparents?
No.
Clearly no children or grandchildren.
No, but she has 6 siblings.
Then the siblings would share it equally.
How do we go about that?
There are rules in the Administration and Probate Act that talk about intestate succession. What happens to an estate if somebody dies without a will? And there are the rules if whether you've got a partner, children from another relationship, it just goes on and on. But in essence, for your friend, your family member, divided equally between the siblings.
But she may want it to go somewhere else. Is that right, Gail?
No, I don't, Virginia. No, it's simple and straightforward. That's what I want to happen to it. And all the siblings are in agreement with that.
But what she wants to happen to it, does she have a desire?
No, she doesn't.
Okay.
No, she doesn't.
Can Gail not be given power of attorney here to make up this will on behalf
We
of the
can't
relative?
the power of attorney doesn't entitle you to make a will.
On behalf of
but
someone.
what I'm saying is that for Gail's family member, she doesn't need a will. The rules automatically provide.
No, I get that, but I guess I'm seeing this from a slightly different perspective, which is from the perspective of the person. And they may be disabled, but they have agency, and their agency and their individual wishes need to be respected and understood and known and reflected. And Gail, I guess that's probably where you're getting here. I mean,
Yeah.
people
There
can
are
make this
two
decision
answers.
on her behalf, but it's about her having a voice in this.
So if you can find a solicitor who is prepared to say, yes, I accept the family member has testamentary capacity and the family member wants X, Y and Z, then the answer would be a will can be prepared that says that. And there's also a process for what's called a statutory will, and where you make an application to a Supreme Court judge to make a will in a particular form.
Gail, I think we can hook you up with someone from Disabilities Victoria who can actually help you with this.
That would be good, Virginia, because at the moment she has good health, but we're just trying to set things in place so that there's no issue further down the track.
No, indeed. But as I say, and I think it's really interesting that you've called in, Gail, when we're coming up to International Day of People with a Disability, and we're actually talking about individual choice, and that life not happening to these people, but people with disability actually having choice and agency over their life, that her will and that her desire be reflected as ably and as completely as my will might be. And I know there will be a way of doing that. Gail, just stay on the line. I'm passing you back to Katrina. We'll get your details and we'll see if there's some way that we can help you with that. Peter in Dandenong South, good morning.
Good morning, Virginia. Good morning, David.
Morning.
Look, thank you for taking my call. I'll try to be as brief as I can. I made a purchasing of a motor vehicle 12 months ago. It's a diesel Japanese brand, situated from Docklands in Melbourne. At the 2-month period of ownership, the car had failed dramatically twice by what's called a diesel particulate filter,
Yes.
situated in the exhaust.
Does that mean you weren't driving it enough, does it, Peter?
No, David. This is. I had exactly the same car previously, and I had such a good run out of it.
That
I
you went and
purchased another
replaced it?
one.
Yes, okay.
Yep. So, like for like, same engine, same spec. Anyway, up until the 2.5 month, the car had been 50-50 in the shop and 50% in my ownership. The dealer had very kindly lent me a loan car and worked through all the procedures then. But I wasn't happy, and I actually approached them on the basis that the car was a lemon, and I wasn't confident because it was just failing.
Yes.
With the DPF, it just stops going.
Yes.
3 weeks ago.
So do you want a refund?
Yeah. Yep. And I've requested that in writing.
Let's
I
see if we can get
understand.
one.
I would be talking to the manufacturer rather than the dealer. But I would also consider making an application to VCAT. There have been a couple of cases to VCAT in relation to lemon cases. So there's no definition of what a lemon is. So we know it when we see it, but we can't describe it properly. So have a look at, you can find VCAT cases on Austli, austlii.edu.au. You can find Victorian VCAT cases that talk about what a lemon is. There was one gentleman.
There's a formal definition of one, is there?
No, there isn't a formal definition, but there was one man who said that he wanted a particular company to take the car back because he didn't think the GPS maps were quite good enough. So that doesn't sound your problem, Danny.
It's a bit
Peter,
more
that's where you
fundamental.
start. It's not going to cost you a great deal of money to run the claim. All right?
Thank you. Just to close off, 3 weeks ago, the car failed completely on the M11 freeway
Yes.
with the front differential and gearbox going. It's an all-wheel drive car.
Yeah,
We
sounds like it's got
experienced
some
a
problems.
massive deceleration from 100 kilometres an hour to 60 kilometres an hour in approximately 55, 60 metres.
Yes.
And if a semi-trailer had been behind us, my wife and I wouldn't be here anymore.
Wouldn't be here. So, Peter,
It's a
that's
powerful
exactly where I
argument.
would be going.
Yeah. Okay, good luck. This sounds like you've got a very powerful argument there. Hubert in Camberwell, hi.
Hi.
Go
How are
ahead.
you? Good morning, David. And
Morning.
Good morning, G. I got this story from my friend when she rang me one night to go and start her lawnmower because she got a fine from the council for not cutting her lawn in the backyard. But initially I thought it was funny and I make a joke of her. Anyway, she cut the grass and apparently the council then went into her property one day, not knocking on her door, and she believed she was inside, but they didn't notify her. And she's a mother of 4, single mother of 4. So, and took photos of it, and then find her again after she cut the lawn. They accused her of not removing firewood. There was some firewood she keeps for, she said, barbecuing. And when I look at it, I actually visited her last week.
Yeah.
And it's about knee height, probably a cubic meter or 2 cubic meter at the most.
So,
Anyway.
Hubert, how is this in the country? Is it in the city?
In a suburb.
Well, what
Ma-
happens is that an outer suburb or an inner suburb?
Oh, in a suburb.
The councils are concerned about fire risk, and the
I
process
understand.
and the process is that the council serves a notice. They serve a fire clearance notice that says, "I need you to cut your grass."
Yes.
And
she did that.
and then the question is whether you've complied or not. I think there's something in the fire notice as to how short it's supposed to be, but
Yes, she
presumably
did.
it wasn't
150
knee-high
meters.
after it was cut.
No, it wasn't.
No.
When on the night when I got called for cutting the lawn because she couldn't start the lawnmower. In fact, the lawnmower job was one of the kids' job. As you know, the kids are sometimes they play too much games and
Okay.
forget to cut the grass.
All right, we'll just stay with the subject.
Hubert,
Dave, what should Hubert do?
well, if you think that the council is being overly officious, then you can talk to council or you can involve the Victorian State Ombudsman. And the question will be whether or not it was a trespass to see whether or not they were looking in the backyard. I would have thought not if there was the high fire notice. There'll be the local government will give them some rights of access. But if you think they're being unreasonable, talk to the Victorian State Ombudsman. But the complaint would need to come from your friend, not from you on her behalf.
Yeah, so off to the State Ombudsman. But as David says, thank you for calling in, but she'll have to take it further from here. Tony is in St Kilda. Good morning.
Good morning. Now, I had a motor accident 6.5 years ago. I never admitted fault, but I got all the usual letters from the 2 insurance companies because there were 2 other vehicles, demanding money, and I ignored them basically. Now, I want to know, am I correct in thinking there's a statute of limitations of 6 years, for them?
You're out of time, Tony. They can't chase you today. All right?
Okay, but if they had made a judgment against me without my knowing,
No,
am I
let's-
right
let's-
believing
sorry.
that's 12 years?
No, let's step this through. There is there's a limitation period which I think is 6 years for them to commence proceedings, and that's from either from the later of the acknowledgement by you of the liability or the accident. And when you get a judgment can be enforced, or you can enforce a judgment for 15 years. Right, so you can go to the magistrate's court and you can search your name and you can see whether or not you've been made a defendant to any proceeding.
Okay.
But I would have thought that if they haven't hassled you for 6.5 years, they're not going to. You can
Okay.
also do a credit report, because if they obtained a judgment against you for a couple of $1,000s or whatever it was, then that will show on your credit report.
It was a fairly large amount of money. One vehicle was, a write-off at $65,000.
Well, 6.5 years ago, it either might have been, it's still the magistrate's court, limit of $100,000. You can check the magistrate's court and find out whether you were a defendant to any proceeding in the last 10 years.
Good luck with that. We're back talking about trees this morning, David. Barry, good morning to you.
G'day. A neighbour's tree has come over my fence. I got the chainsaw and cut the limbs directly above the wire and put all the limbs back on his side of the fence.
Yes.
Have I done the right thing?
Are we talking about morally or legally, Barry?
Well, legally.
Legally, you've done exactly what you're entitled to do. I always worry if people simply throw the branches back, whether or not you're going to cause some damage to their property. But if that's not the case, then you don't have a problem. You were entitled to give them back their branches.
Well, that's exactly what I did. I stacked them neatly and in a pile, so they'd be easily removed.
Sorry. Does that mean you trespassed for the purpose of?
No, certainly not. I would not dare.
You've got very long arms, have you, Barry?
I just simply put them over in a very neat pile, and about 2 or 3 days later, he cleaned them up. But I just wanted to check that I've.
No, you haven't broken the law.
And I'm not going to be in jail. Thanks for that.
No, you're all right. David will look after you. Diane in Somerville, good morning.
Oh, good morning. I have a question about adverse possession. So a family member has been living in my mother's house rent-free for the last 14 years.
Yes.
My mother initially allowed her to live there out of goodwill, but since then the family member has become estranged and now refuses to move out. My question is with respect to the payment arrangement and whether that would hinder a possible adverse possession claim.
When did they stop paying rent?
They never started. There's nothing in writing.
Is there any acknowledgement by the family member as to your mother's rights in relation to the property?
Nothing. But the issue is, my question is with respect to payments and whether, so when I'm talking about payments, I'm talking about bills, etc., and whether that would hinder a possible adverse possession claim. So my mother has maintained the building insurance for the last 14 years.
Yes.
And paid the council rate. However, the family member has paid all utilities, contents insurance, maintenance costs, etc.
I would be starting to be worried, Diane.
Right.
So whether you, even if you had a lease that said it was $1 a year,
yes,
then you've got an acknowledgement that it's your mother's property and she stays there at your mother's, with your mother's consent and agreement.
Yes.
So we just need the family member to acknowledge that your mother is the owner and that she's there. So a letter would be barely adequate, and a lease would be great, even if it was $10 a year.
Right. And there's nothing. She's in fact claiming that it's her house now, and that's our concern.
Well, it's 15 years for an adverse possession claim. You're at 14.
Yes,
Now's the time I would be formalising the arrangement.
Right. So the payment arrangements in terms of my mother paying for building insurance, council rates.
But your mother does all that remotely. Your mother is liable to pay the rates because she's the registered owner. Your mother pays the building insurance because she owns the house.
Yes.
But everything that your family member does is inconsistent with is what's consistent with them being the owner.
Right.
So they keep your mother out. You've got a problem.
Does Diane? Do they need to consider eviction here?
You talk to me about being nice to people to start with, Virginia. I would be starting with a conversation. I now want to formalise your residence. It might be here's a 2-year lease or a 3-year lease or a 1-year lease or whatever it is.
And if they resist?
At that point, I would be taking proceedings for possession of the property, and even just so that you succeed in, if you like, killing the adverse possession claim.
Good luck with that one, Diane, but it sounds like the clock is ticking, David.
Yeah, we didn't ask Diane what the relationship was, but if it was a family member that you might end up with when Mum dies, Mum provided the house for me for the last 15 years. I wanted in addition to what I get under the will.
Yeah, that really is scary, isn't it? Okay. David is giving me his most concerned look right now, Diane, so step onto that one quickly. Many divided views on Faith No More. There are those who are lining up with you. There are those who are lining up with me.
Okay. We're not counting the numbers though, are we?
I am. Great to see you.
Thank you.
And lovely to have you back in the studio. David Whiting back with you next week, as he always is, very generously giving his time to give you some legal advice.